Welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM, your flagship TV and radio stations on our network of television, radio, and other media outlets here on the Oakland County Megacast. In addition, today, as always, we're joined also on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99 in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the village of Franklin on Birmingham area municipal access, and also in the Birmingham Bloomfield area on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District. Today, as always, online, civiccentertv.com. Two ways to watch us on our website. The small player on our homepage at the top right, or by clicking on our Watch Live link. That's available to you on your phone, your tablet, and other handheld media devices as well. And today, we're also on Facebook on our pages, Civic Center TV and Lakes FM on Facebook. Facebook.com/CivicCenterTV15 and Facebook.com/LakesFM. And as always, joining me in the studio is my co-host, Ronnie Dahl.
So I'm going to warn everyone, I forgot to take my allergy medicine. And you go outside, it's so nice to have spring in the air.
It is.
Right? Everything's starting to bloom, the grass is getting greener. But this time of the year, I get the allergies. And I walked out, I'm like, oh, I forgot to take my allergy pill, and my eyes are starting to water, my nose is running, I'm coughing. I'm like, oh, what a pain in the butt.
Yeah, allergies are no fun, and when they hit you, they just hit. They don't ease in. It's not you feel them coming on. They're just there, and especially when you gotta take meds to try to ease them away and you miss them by just a little bit, that only makes that much more of a pain. So definitely feel for you this morning coming in with having to take your allergy medication a little bit later, and then come in and do a 2-hour radio show too.
So usually after it rains, it's a little bit better, right?
Because clears the air.
Exactly. And I walked the dog early this morning, and I was fine, so it didn't make me think about it because it had rained overnight. But, goodness gracious.
Yeah. Now, glad to come out with a little less humidity today after the rain last night, but definitely still going to be a big adjustment for a lot of people with allergies as we go slowly into this spring, both kind of bouncing back into regular spring weather, getting a little preview of summer, and then going back and forth as well, with some rain in between.
So, jumping into the headlines, I mean, everything is about our surge right now in the state of Michigan. Yeah. We made national news.
Yes.
ABC News, Good Morning America, they brought a reporter in. They interviewed people at Bauman Hospital because our surge continues here in the state of Michigan. Now, one good thing about this, with more people being eligible to be vaccinated, doses have been increased here in Oakland County. So keep in mind, it's now open to everyone 16 years and older. But more people are trying to find the appointments as well. So the doses allotted to Oakland County this week from the state number 37,090, which includes 2,340 Pfizer doses from FEMA. That's up from just over 30,000 doses a week ago. And so, it may not seem a lot, but that's 7,000 more people that are going to be able to get vaccinated this week here in Oakland County within our neighborhood. So vaccine doses distributed to the state dropped this week, though, after receiving a record number of over 620,000 doses a week ago. Michigan is expected to receive nearly half of that, with just about 313,700 doses this week from the federal government. Of course, that's according to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So keep in mind, all individuals 16 and 17 years of age are eligible to receive only the Pfizer vaccine, though. So the Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson, they are only available to those 18 years and older. So any minors 16 and 17 need a parent or a legal guardian to go with them to their appointment to provide consent to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. So if you're here in Michigan, residents, be proactive. Grab a vaccine appointment now. With less doses available, it could be harder to start to get some of these. And of course, we've told you about this before. There's, they've started the mass vaccination clinic over at United Mortgage Wholesale,
Yes,
their sports complex in Pontiac. And so go to oaklandcountyvaccine.com, click on Save Your Spot. But keep in mind, if you do get your vaccine someplace else, go ahead and remove your spot as well. So they don't take the time to try to track you down if you don't need to go ahead and get the vaccine here in Oakland County. If you do not have access to the internet, which a lot of people do not, you can call 810-331-0902. 810-331-0902, and you can make an appointment with Ready Nursing Solutions, which has a contract with the county. So they are actually going out to people's homes right now to help them get vaccinated.
Yeah, we had them on the show recently, too. You can hear a little bit more about that program, civiccentertv.com/megacast, and look up that interview. And with the number of vaccines coming into Michigan being reduced by half this week from what it was just a week ago, it becomes that much more important to get yourself in line as quickly as you can, because things have slowed down just a little bit, although the governor continues to urge the federal government to pull more vaccine doses into the state as we are in a race against this current surge that we're in. And the governor and the Health and Human Services Department, their solution to dealing with this current surge is to ramp up the vaccine effort and try to get us a little bit closer to that 70% margin of the population, 70 to 80% margin of the population for herd immunity as quickly as possible, and reduce the severity that this surge can possibly reach, while allowing businesses and schools and other entities to follow more of a conservative personal responsibility model to dealing with COVID-19 in the meantime.
So Wayne State University announced today that they were basically closing their campus to in-person learning right now for at least the next 10 days. So you want to go to Wayne State University's website if you're impacted by that. And of course, they're asking people who can work remotely to continue to do so. One thing they're talking about, we have so many cases here in the state of Michigan that we could be creating a new variant of our own. We're hearing about the variant that's coming out of, the UK is one of the big ones that people have been talking about. But now there's a possibility, because of all the variants floating around here in the state of Michigan, we could have a new strain ourselves.
Yeah, that's a possibility, and we had a really interesting interview the last time we spoke with Dr. Russell Faust from the Oakland County Health Division. He kind of went into a little bit of detail, just the very basics about how these variants do pop up, and explained how it happens, because these viruses change every time that they spread and every time that they duplicate. And as those minor changes are made over time, it creates an entirely new strain of the virus, which is how we get these variants. And then those variants start to spread and have, in many cases with the current variants we have been more contagious and have led to slightly more or much more severe symptoms. So we're in a spot right now where COVID is spreading so fast. I mean, before we've spoken about how Michigan in the past several weeks has been littering the top 10 cities in the United States of COVID cases. Earlier on this week, the last I saw, we had the first 6 out of the top 10 and 7 out of the top 10 total cities, top 10 cities in the U.S. for COVID cases were here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, so the governor was actually at Ford Field yesterday,
yes,
getting the vaccine along with her daughters. They have what they're calling these student ambassadors, and trying to really spread the word and encourage kids, or teenagers, we should say, to be able to get vaccinated. What's going to be interesting, though, because they can only get the one vaccine, how is that going to work when you make your appointment? Because sometimes even the healthcare provider that's given the vaccine may not know which ones they're getting that day as well.
Yeah, it's got to throw a monkey wrench into the process of scheduling these vaccines, because if you don't know with clear advance notice, are they canceling those appointments for those that are 16 or 17 years old and can only get the Pfizer vaccine if they end up having Moderna, or they end up having Johnson & Johnson vaccines instead of Pfizer on that given day? And then in that case, are they moving other people into line and saying, hey, we have an appointment that opened up at this time or that time, and we have a space open? Or are they doing a situation like we've had a couple of times recently at other vaccination sites where, hey, we have extra vaccine at the end of the day. It's open to anybody, first come, first serve. It's Pfizer vaccine, or it's Moderna, or it's Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Only people over 18 are eligible for this particular vaccine.
So the governor, though, is hinting that Michigan may be able to lift most remaining COVID-19 business restrictions this summer if Michigan's vaccination rate increases, but said the state may take additional action to stop the spread of the virus through school and club sports. So Whitmer made the comments on CNN's Wolf Blitzer. Is that
Wolf Blitzer? Yes.
Yeah.
Situation.
I really got to put my glasses on. And he's such an icon. He's been around for years. I should be able to. But I stopped watching cable news.
Yeah, I
think it's been the
I would agree.
Fall of journalism. After he was asked whether Whitmer would follow California's lead and consider fully reopening businesses by mid-June, Whitmer said that Michigan's restrictions would likewise depend on where the state was in relation to its goal to vaccinate 70% of individuals over the age of 16. The rate right now is about 22.8%. So nearly 3 million people, or 36.7% of the state's population, has received at least the first dose of the vaccine. Michigan opened vaccine eligibility, of course, to everyone over the age of 16 this week. The governor also expressed concern about the spread of the virus through school sports.
Yeah, school sports has been a proposed problem area for COVID-19 spread, as has been spreading through outbreaks in schools over the last several weeks, as kids are going back and schools are having full in-person learning for at least part of the week, at least 20% of the week, to get that extra state funding we spoke about yesterday with Senator Rosemary Bayer. And so that puts them in a greater position, even with social distancing, even with masks, when you're cramped into those schools in full capacity and you're around people. And sometimes when you're wearing a mask an entire day, or you're keeping those precautions an entire day, you slowly but surely shift back to what you have normally been behaving on, which is just speaking person to person and not really thinking about those things, and it can make for an easier spread. So schools definitely have been a problem area. In terms of the numbers, 36.7% of the state's population at least one dose in. So that being the case, we're about halfway there at best right now. And that's all the more reason why, even with the restrictions being loosened in the state of Michigan, and even with the confidence that we are getting close to the end of this and we're well into the vaccine process, that we still need to be very careful about this, because Michigan is a problem area for COVID-19, arguably the biggest problem area in the United States and one of the worst in the world at this moment in time. And we need to be extra careful about what we're doing here, because clearly the spread of COVID-19 is taking a negative turn.
I really find the spread here in the state fascinating, because what makes us so different than every other state? And one thing I think is happening, I know they're saying that the numbers are coming back to schools and youth sports, but when I go on my social media, everybody is traveling right now.
Yeah.
And so many people are in Florida or the Carolinas or Tennessee, and they're going to some of these states where they don't have the same restrictions that we do here in Michigan. And you got to remember, all those people are coming back. And I don't know if that's caused the spread, but I would think that that's at least some type of a factor.
Yeah, I would think it has to be, because there's been such consistent travel over the last month as people have gone on spring breaks, as people have said, okay, it's been a year since we've traveled, we're stressed, we've been through this pandemic, we need to take a load off here, have a little fun, relax a little bit before we go back to our daily grind in this pandemic. And when you're doing that, you're going to other places that are under other circumstances, have different rules in place, and then you're coming back. And in some cases, maybe people are quarantining when they come back just to be extra safe, but maybe they aren't, and they're going right back in. And for all they know, they could have been exposed in another state and been bringing it back. We saw that last year at the beginning of the pandemic as people were coming back from spring break. There was a lot of spread then. And right now, with Michigan being such a problem area, it's not exactly far-fetched to think that as people have traveled to other places with less stringent restrictions, even though ours have been been loosened significantly over the last several weeks, that they could be bringing it back to the state of Michigan.
I know that one report that I read this week said one of the reasons we could be seeing a surge as well is not only with the fact that so many people are traveling right now, but you add in we haven't reached the herd immunity that maybe some of these other states that didn't have the same restrictions in place throughout the pandemic. So we slowed our numbers in the beginning, but now we're kind of seeing at the end because people are in this pandemic fatigue and loosening their guard as well. And so we don't have that herd immunity that some of the other states, such as Florida, maybe reached as well.
Yeah, a lot of those states, they had very loose restrictions early on. They had a massive cases several times throughout the pandemic. Were very much problem areas, kind of like we were. And as arguably irresponsible as that was for their leadership to have those loose restrictions, if any, in place at that time, it may have brought them a little bit further along. More people have developed some antibodies to COVID-19 if they had non-severe cases. They may have had a large number of cases and a fairly large number of deaths at the time, but people also developed some semblance of at least partial immunity to COVID-19 and then got into the vaccination process. And maybe that's helped them along, maybe it hasn't, but here in the state of Michigan, our extra care early on and the continued up and down of this pandemic has definitely had an effect on how people have taken these precautions seriously over time and has definitely impacted the spread of COVID-19, both in the spikes that we have previously experienced and the current surge in the state.
So here's one thing that's a little bit concerning. State health officials say 246 fully vaccinated Michigan residents did get the coronavirus from January to March. 3 of them have died. These are individuals who have had a positive test 14 or more days after the last dose in the vaccine series. That's according to the spokesperson for the state health department. The 3 fully vaccinated people who died were all over the age of 65. 2 of them were within 3 weeks of the full vaccination. So while the majority of the population develops full immunity within 14 days of completion of their vaccine series, there is a small proportion that appear to take longer to get that full antibody response. So the CDC is working to better understand the risk and the characteristics of this group. So although the so-called vaccine breakthrough cases are extremely rare, and all 3 COVID-19 vaccines on the market are considered highly effective with rates from 72% for Johnson & Johnson's vaccine to 94 to 95% for Moderna and Pfizer, it can still happen. And we understand this, so keep in mind that the 246 breakthrough cases occurred among the more than 1.8 million Michiganders who are fully vaccinated. So really, when you take that in the context of the numbers, they are very low. However, it does still happen. The thing with this is when you have a story such as this and it gets a headline, some of the people that could be on the fence about getting the vaccine, it could sway them away from getting it.
And that's all the more reason why it should always be encouraged, and we certainly encourage that here on the Megacast and at Civic Center TV, that you go beyond the headline. You read the article, you look into the information, and you get the full scope of this. Because, of course, it's horrible that 246 people who were vaccinated ended up with COVID-19. It's even more horrible, and it's tragic that 3 of those people did end up losing their lives in the process. But out of the 1.8 million people vaccinated, 246 of these, it's a very, very rare situation. That being said, it's another reason to continue to be careful as we approach that herd immunity situation here in the state of Michigan with 70 to 80% of the population being vaccinated, because 3 deaths out of 246 is not very much. 246 deaths out of 1.8 million is not very much either, but these cases
no, there were
do
3
happen.
deaths.
Sorry, 3 deaths.
Yes.
Right. That's 3 deaths out of 246, and 246 out of 1.8 million who were vaccinated that did get it. Those aren't colossal numbers, but they're numbers nonetheless, and it's still reason to continue to be careful because COVID-19 is going to continue to spread even through the vaccination process.
And of course, you can always find the latest headlines. Just go to civiccentertv.com, click on coronavirus. That's where you will find the latest headlines and links to the story, but also at the top of the page, links to valuable resources that you may want to check out on your own, including Oakland County, the state of Michigan, and the CDC. So with that, though, we have a good show ahead for you on this Wednesday edition of the Megacast. We will be talking with, despite the pandemic, the arts are emerging out of the crisis and continuing to go on. And so with that, coming up at 10:20, it is 10:20. So right after this break, we'll be speaking with the creative director and English musical theater teacher and some of the students over at West Bloomfield Middle School with about their upcoming performance. And then at 10:40, our good friend Dr. Jamie Taweel will be with us. A lot of questions to talk to him about, including the importance of vitamin D. Yep. And during this crisis and other times as well. And then in the 11 o'clock time, we'll be checking in with Debbie Binder with the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's office to see what's going on over there. And then, of course, we'll be speaking with Jim Manna at 11:20. I don't know, the real estate market, the housing market right now, Tyler, crazy.
It is. It is very crazy.
So we'll kind of get some insight from him, and then we'll round out the show with our good friend Joe Bauman over at the Birmingham and Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. They've had to cancel one of their popular events, so we'll get a little bit more information from him regarding that. All of that coming up on the Wednesday edition of the Megacast.
Quitting smoking can improve your health, but it also protects your loved ones from secondhand smoke. Did you know there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke? Smoke from cigarettes, e-cigs, and hookah can travel through ventilation systems and harm those around you. So clear the air and stop secondhand smoke. Call the Michigan Tobacco Quit Line at 1-800-784-8669. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Wearing a mask is more than protection. It's a bridge to better days. The path back to celebrations with family. Nights out on the town with friends. Game days with your favorite sports teams. And the thrill of live concerts. But until we can all get the COVID-19 vaccine and build community immunity, which will take time, we all need to continue to stay careful. Because Michigan's recovery is depending on you, and so are your family, friends, and neighbors. So even after you're vaccinated, wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and social distance. One day in the near future, we will all be able to put this pandemic behind us. But until then, spread hope, not COVID. Learn more at michigan.gov/coronavirus. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Finally, I just got my COVID-19 vaccine.
I registered with my local health department and they called me.
I got mine at the pharmacy and my neighbor got hers from the hospital.
I'm not a techie person, so I called the COVID hotline and they helped me schedule an appointment.
Get vaccinated with the first vaccine you can. Protect us all.
Learn more at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. As a reminder, you can always catch us Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon, live here on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. If you have cable, thank you. A portion of your fee helps support programming such as this. You'll find us Channel 15 on Comcast, 99 on AT&T. You can also listen to us on the radio if you're out driving around, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. It's been a really hard year for so many of the students that are in the arts and theater. It could be a little bit challenging to try to put on the plays and the programming in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis because kind of hard to be around one another.
Yeah, it's tough to do that, and on top of that, there's so much coordination, there's so much rehearsal, there's so much technical aspects that go into each one of these shows and each one of the scenes in these shows, and preparing for that without being able to be close to each other and in that setting every single day in the rehearsal process and when you're doing the shows has to be a tough process, Ronnie.
But just like everyone else, so many people have been creative and trying to get around the restrictions to still support so many of the things in the theaters and the arts. And so, and that includes the West Bloomfield Middle School. They have an upcoming program. What happens in Neverland stays in Neverland. To talk more about that, we have pretty much a full cast, but let's go ahead and start with Christine Stevens. She's the creative director and English musical theater teacher over at the middle school. Thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
What has it been like to try to put on programming right now in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, it's felt pretty impossible, and definitely shed some tears and frustration to my partner and co-director, April Tini. But what's kept us going through it all and what's helped motivate us is the students. They're so passionate and creative and involved and eager. They're eager to learn, and they're dying to create and engage with each other. And so once my partner and I saw how motivated they were, we decided that we just couldn't let COVID hold us or them back, and we had to showcase their talent and creativity and help them work towards something important throughout all of this. And I think it's really helped me get through this COVID time, is having something beautiful and wonderful to work toward. And I think it's really helped the kids, and it's been such a fun, glorious thing to do when really we thought that nothing was possible at the start of this school year.
So with that, April, you're the co-director. What was it like to try to organize all of this and bring it together and do it? I would imagine you've been doing a lot of it via Zoom, or are you in person?
Yes, Ronnie. Well, in the West Bloomfield Middle School, our academic classes meet in person, and the elective classes meet online. So Christine and I co-direct the musical theater class, which meets via Zoom only, and has been that way since September. So Christine and I have been meeting regularly over FaceTime or Zoom and planning. We try to stay a week or two ahead of the kids based on what we've been able to accomplish in the previous week. And the organization is tremendous, but it's interesting because everything takes on a different way when it comes to trying to communicate over Zoom. So there's email involved, there's class time, there's asynchronous work. We were lucky because we were able to gain the students' trust, and we did that by just ensuring them at the beginning of the year that we were there for them, and we promised that we would help them put together the most amazing virtual project that we were capable of. And the students really stepped up, and they helped Ms. Stevens and I organize in the way that we needed to. So it was not easy, but it's been fun. We've had a lot of laughs in between the frustrations, and the kids seem really excited to be with us. We've created a wonderful community, and through that community creation and trust, we've been able to get to the heart of the art, which is putting on this wonderful production.
And so with that, we're lucky enough to have a couple of the students with us here on the Megacast. Joseph, if we can bring you in to the conversation, what's your role?
My role in this play is Peter Pan with a couple of other students who are playing the same role.
What's this been like for you?
It's pretty crazy and also really fun at the same time, because learning over Zoom is totally different than last year when I was in 6th grade, because you got to interact with different students, and you get to do that the same way. It's just over a computer. And I feel like also doing it in person and being able to film it in person was a step up from what you could do when you would be in 6th grade, which is the still same in-person interaction, but it's just not the same because you have to learn in different ways.
So with that, were you able to help Christine and April with some of the technical sides? Because I feel like as students, you guys are so much smarter than we are when it comes to technology today. I think we're freezing up a little bit with you here. So if Sarah, let's go ahead and bring in Sarah Lauerman now. She is also a member of the play. Again, What Happens in Neverland Stays in Neverland. It is the West Bloomfield Middle School's programming that they're going to be putting on. Sarah, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
What's your role in the play?
I play Wendy with a couple of other girls.
So how's that been for you and the other people playing the same part?
Well, I think it's been a really good experience. You know, I've never had to do anything like this before, acting over Zoom. And it's been really cool to see, you know, the kinds of things that you can do over Zoom, which I didn't know before. And I like the other girls. I think they're super nice. And I think we all did a great job and really pushed through doing our best with this.
What did you learn from this experience?
I definitely learned more about acting with a camera because, again, I've never really done this before. And I learned more about, you know, what musical theater is really about. It's not necessarily about acting on a stage or putting on a production. It's more about the people in the class that really make it an amazing class.
So with that, Christine Stevens will bring you back into the conversation. She's the creative director and English musical theater teacher for the West Bloomfield Middle School. Christine, what is this going to look like once the performance is done? Is it going to be a virtual performance, nothing in person?
Yes. So this is something very unique to COVID times. We put together a virtual production. And so what we did was all of the rehearsals took place over Zoom or through video submissions. The kids would record themselves, send them to me. I would record myself and send it back to them. But we were fortunate enough to be able to book the Bauman Theater. They set up a virtual production kind of house there. So we were able to put up different small sets. It's like a recording studio. So we recorded live very safely with very small groups of students, following all of the guidelines, of course. So we recorded live, and then the videos, there'll be 3 casts because we wanted to give everyone an opportunity to be in it. Those videos are almost done being edited, and they are being put into a video. So we will have 3 videos of 3 casts for this production, and it will stream on the district's YouTube channel.
This is really fascinating to me how everyone's been able to get creative throughout this time. Hey, April Teeney, she's the co-director for the upcoming program, What Happens in Neverland Stays in Neverland. April, when it came to actually trying to merge all these pieces, what's that process been?
Well, there certainly was a lot of foresight involved, right? Mrs. Stevens and I planned with our knowledge of film versus live, which is what we used to teach the kids. And then it was carefully planned. Mrs. Stevens did an amazing job of planning each of the kids to come in at a separate time to keep it COVID compliant and record themselves. And there were a few ensemble numbers, which or ensemble scenes rather, which we recorded, very carefully and safely. And we instructed the kids ahead of time what to expect. And we were lucky, Ronnie, because everything, like the stars aligned for us. Our videographer and our audio engineer are pros, and they worked beautifully with the kids. The kids were completely prepared. We had a wonderful costumer on set with us. and then a lighting tech. And so all the pieces were there, like we were creating a real film. And the kids not only got to see each other from a distance, COVID safely, but then they got to act in front of a camera. They got feedback. They were able to sometimes do a second take. Sometimes they didn't need to do a second take. And I think they were thrilled. They were proud of themselves. And they realized that with the trust that they had put in to us and the trust that we had in them, all came together. So
it really is a lot to go on and to put into trying to pull this off. Joseph Davis, he's one of the students playing one of the roles of Peter Pan. So how does this work for you? Do you like this better?
I think that it's definitely a change. And I think that the way that they put it together, I do like it better than if we were to only put on a virtual production, because it's contact with different people and has, as they mentioned, the sets. So I do like this a little bit better, but at the same time, it would have totally been better if you were able to do it live.
But is it a little bit harder when you're live? Because if you mess up, you just have to keep going. Whereas when it's recorded, you can say, "Can we do that again?"
Yes, that is definitely true. With being on a live set, you have to know all your lines, be ready for any count-ins. But with recording, if you
I think we lost the last part there with you, Joseph. You're dragging just a little bit. We're going to go ahead and bring over Sarah now. Sarah Lauerman, she is playing the part of Wendy along with other students. Sarah, what's been the best part of this for you? It's different than a live performance, but what do you like about this?
I think the best part was actually being able to put on a production. When I came into this year, I didn't really know what it was going to be like because of doing it virtually. But I think the best part, is still having all of my classmates and still having that interaction with all of them. It's a great community.
With that, Sarah, I have to say, you've been back for in-person classing at least part-time?
Yes, I have 4 of my academic classes in the actual classroom and then my 2 arts classes over Zoom.
Were you excited to go back to the school building? Or did you like learning at home wearing your pajamas?
I was not excited at first because I did like sleeping in and being able to wear whatever I wanted and be wherever I wanted, but it was actually really good once I got back to school, and it was better than I realized it would be.
So what do you think you've learned from trying to do this production and the way that you've had to format it because of the COVID crisis? Do you think it's made you, to some degree, a better performer?
I definitely think so. I think it's really expanded my skills and what I've been able to do through acting, with the camera and live. And like I said before, I've learned a lot more skills through this whole experience.
We're talking with several members over at the West Bloomfield Middle School. Kristen Stevens, she's the creative director and English musical theater teacher. April Teeney, co-director, and Sarah Lauerman and Joseph Davis. They are students at West Bloomfield Middle School. They have the upcoming production of What Happens in Neverland Stays in Neverland. Christine, if we can jump back to you. We're sorry, it's a little crazy here with the 4 people on Zoom and going back and forth. When is the performance? How can people find it? And will it be recorded so that maybe if people miss it at the first performance, they can rewatch it?
Yes. So it's not officially live. It's been pre-recorded and is in the editing process. So the videos will be made available on West Bloomfield School District's YouTube channel, and that will happen on April 16th at 8 p.m. And they will be up all weekend through probably around midnight on Sunday, April 18th. There are 3 videos, 3 casts, because we wanted to allow all students to be a part of this fun opportunity. And I was just texting with Mr. Dan Durkin, our media and marketing person at the district, and he said it will be streaming on Facebook and Twitter, and it will be on our district website and YouTube channel.
That's great. And one of the good things about this is we know a lot of times, some of the students have relatives. When we do these performances the old-fashioned way in the theater, sometimes people can't make the performance just due to schedules, or maybe they live out of town. So this is kind of one of the benefits of COVID and the crisis, is that it's going to be available for them and their loved ones to see throughout the country.
Absolutely. I completely agree. My family is in California and spread out around the West Coast, and they are so excited to be able to support us. And I completely agree. That is a very big positive thing that's come out of this.
And with that, April, before we say goodbye, anything that you want to add about this performance?
It's very, very special. We're so proud of the students. We still feel that this has been something remarkable we've been able to accomplish. We are grateful for the support of our colleagues at West Bloomfield Middle School and within the West Bloomfield District, who said, okay, if you feel like you guys can do this, go right ahead and do it for the kids. So we did have a lot of support within the district. We also had a lot of support with our student families and the students themselves. Again, Ronnie, I think I've said it 3 times, but that the kids trusted us is it's the most important thing. They put their trust in us, and then we, together, Christine and I were able to deliver, and we garnered strength from each other. So we're just very, very grateful for this process, and we choose to look forward, and we choose to celebrate the now, because we've all spent enough time mourning a little bit the past and what we've lost, and we're all aware of it now. And this is great. This is marvelous. And we thank you for having us on today and allowing us to share with you this wonderful experience. And hopefully as many people as possible can watch this amazing show and these amazingly talented students.
And Sarah and Joseph, we want to say good luck to the both of you. Probably it takes away from a little bit of the nervousness of opening day because it's recorded. Are you nervous at all, Sarah?
I am nervous. I'm always nervous when these things happen. But in the recording process, it was a little less nerve-wracking.
How about for you, Joseph? Were you nervous, or are you nervous? Or you seem like you're a cool, calm cucumber.
Yes, I was nervous. Yes, and I still am, for my family to see the rest of my monologue.
Well, I'm sure they'll be very proud of you, and good luck to all of you. And thank you all for, trying to keep the spirit of the arts alive throughout the pandemic. And it's been a great thing for people to focus on and kind of take our minds off of everything that's going on. So we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
So again, what happens in Neverland stays in Neverland. From the West Bloomfield Middle School programming, it is going to be premiering Friday, April 16th at 8 p.m. on the West Bloomfield School District's YouTube channel, but also their social media sites as well. They've been so creative throughout this pandemic.
They have, and having an opportunity to do a show like this virtually, but also get everybody involved also in the show by having smaller casts, breaking it into multiple casts, and then providing it on a number of outlets. You're getting more of the community involved, you're getting more of the kids involved in the art and in the craft of acting, and teaching them how to do that in different ways too. That is engaging for them, but also fun for them.
Well, on top of that, too, Tyler, it's the whole editing process that comes into this. And trying to act into a camera is a lot different, but then trying to edit it together.
And trying to put a show together in today's age of theater anyways is a lot different than it used to be. I mean, when I was in college, I did a series of videos when Michigan State's Department of Theater was holding The Tempest. And there's so much technically that goes in to stage plays today, from special effects to different lighting, that's different than before. And then when you're bringing in technology through video editing in a virtual setting like this, something that probably is going to stick around to some extent in theater, whether it's in schools or in professional theater afterwards, it's also teaching these kids about the changing nature also of creative arts.
Well, we wish them the best of luck. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast. When we come back, our good friend Dr. Jamie Taweel will be joining us on the Megacast.
COVID-19 has caused many families to fall behind on finances and on groceries. But you're not alone. You shouldn't have to worry about putting food on the table. MyBridges offers access to quality food and income assistance to help families across the state get the food support they need. It's easy to apply and easy to start shopping. Apply for services at michigan.gov/MIBridges. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
I want to get back to seeing my grandbabies every Sunday and smothering them with big hugs and kisses.
I want to get back to football games with my boys.
I want to get back to feeling and touching, connecting with the people around me.
I want to get back to family dinners and my grandma's mac and cheese.
I want to get back to real grocery shopping, taking my time, walking down every aisle, smelling the tomatoes and melons, having a free sample or two, or 3.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. But now, there are vaccines. And they are the first step that let us get back to feeling optimistic about the days ahead of us. It's okay to have questions.
Is it safe?
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Now, get the facts. Learn more at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Right now, our country feels divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
Me too. Love Has No Labels and One Small Step are helping people with different political views, beliefs, and experiences connect through conversation, and it feels good.
This conversation gives me hope.
It gives me a lot of hope, too. Take a step toward bringing our country and your community together. Start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/one small step. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dull here in the studio. Tyler and myself hang out here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon live. And then, of course, you can always catch replays of the broadcast. Just go to civiccentertv.com, click on the Megacast, and also the on-demand section if you just want to catch up on some of the individual interviews. You know, it's been more than a year into the pandemic, and every time Dr. Jamie Taweel comes on, I have a whole list of questions for him.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of feel like he's my personal doctor.
A little bit.
Hey, Dr. Taweel, how are you?
Oh, man. I don't know if I'm going to get them all.
No. See, you're lucky this isn't in person because I'd be showing you my sprained ankle right now.
Oh, jeez.
But I finally am breaking down and going to the doctor on Friday because I think it's more than a sprain. But
yeah, I looked at it, I can't keep running on it.
Right. I've added wine to my healing regimen, though.
Oh, boy. Oh, man.
So along with the ice, the rest, what is it, Rest, ice, compression.
Elevation, and then wine.
Yes, exactly.
Silent W. Yeah.
I've added that. Hey, good doctor. Good to have you with us. It's been a few weeks since we've talked to you, and sadly, we're seeing the numbers start to increase here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's happening. I think people are getting a little too brash because they're getting the vaccines, and again, the vaccines prevent you from getting a severe type of COVID, but at the same time, you can still spread things. We're trying to get people more vaccinated and better, hopefully better off. But things are unfortunately they're creeping back up.
So what I'm hoping is that eventually, and I don't think this is the case just yet. You can correct me on this. Is that you're able to start getting the vaccine at your doctor's office through your primary care doctor, because I think people are comfortable with you. You have a relationship with your patients.
Well, yeah, I would like to hope I do. Every patient that I have has been asking me questions about the vaccine. They're asking me the really important questions. Is it a hoax? But they're asking me the real important questions. I have this type of disease, or I've taken this, or I have these types of allergies. Is it going to interfere with the vaccine? Excuse me. My advice is always going to be the same. If you go there, they have a very clear list of you can't get the vaccine if X, Y, and Z. So I would rather go and get turned away than to not go at all. You know what I mean? But doctors are starting to have them in their offices now. The vaccines are becoming a little bit more available. It's usually issue of supply and demand. I know the big pharmacies are going to get them first, and they have been, and the hospitals certainly have them, and physicians that are affiliated with hospitals are certainly getting them easily. More of the private guys like myself having a little bit of a time getting them, but they're coming through. So hopefully everyone can get the vaccine soon enough.
To me, it's kind of like testing in the beginning, right? It was so hard in the beginning to get a test because of the delay, and it's a supply and demand, and it's got to keep the demand, or the supply has to catch up with the demand.
Absolutely. And it's such a buildup, and then all of a sudden you're trying to do a rollout, and it becomes rather chaotic.
So what are your thoughts on some of these home tests that are starting to come out now?
Tests are it's always good to have an idea. I mean, a test is it depends on how sensitive the test is, how specific it is, whether or not it's accurate. Unfortunately, a lot of the tests are going to be dependent on operator error. If someone's, if I'm trying to do a swab where I'm going really, really far back into the nasal cavity and they're, wincing and we're, going back, how guaranteed can you be that patients are going to be able to do this at home? So my usual thought is to just, use the tests as kind of as a guideline, definitely couple them with symptoms, but I don't know if they're going to be 100%. I wouldn't trust them completely.
I felt so bad. I was talking to a guy this past weekend who travels a lot for work, and every time he travels or goes into a facility, he has to get tested. He said he's been tested like 70-something times, and I'm just thinking like, oh, ouch. He's like, my nose is so
Hopefully
sore.
he's switching nostrils. I mean, geez,
Right.
that's a lot.
It's not a fun test to get, but people are oddly enough getting very used to it. No, I've not had a lot of people complain about it as much as I would other things. But more people complain about the vaccine themselves than the testing.
Right. And how much of this for you as a doctor is about trying to discredit some of the information that's being spread across social media?
Man, that is tough. I get a lot of things thrown at me that are, either blatantly incorrect or I would say misguided or misinformation rather than, a complete lie. But there's things that do go out there, and I try my hardest to give them a little bit of education. There's, people are coming to me for answers. They're not really coming to me to argue. Patients always come to me and they go, should I get the vaccine? And my usual response is, well, you're asking the guy that sells vaccines whether or not you should get a vaccine. I mean, I'm going to push it. That's what my job is. That's what I do. But, if they have questions or concerns and they're coming to me for genuine answers, I'll definitely try to educate them as best I can.
So are you getting the question right now, because this was the topic of dinner at Easter, about the differences between Johnson & Johnson and the Pfizer and the Moderna, because so many people are still believing that the Pfizer and the Moderna is going to change your DNA?
No. Does not happen.
Right. My niece is a biology major. She's about to graduate from the U of M. She's like, I'm a biology major. I think I understand this a little bit more than the rest of you at the table.
I do agree. I mean, I don't like to sit there and try to act like I'm better than anybody. People are very smart these days and can get their own information. My only advice is to just do a little bit of background research. I mean, I am not allowed to push anything that isn't peer reviewed. It's been through the very rigorous review process that most studies go through. And that's why a lot of times when you ask me these questions on things that haven't been completely published yet, I always give you caveats. This has not been completely reviewed. This is just preliminary data. We can't hang our hat on this. But some people just really want answers, and they're willing to jump on data whether or not it's been verified. And so I really, there's also a bit of confirmation bias. Some people just want to find these things that they're looking for. You go to, it's a joke from a comedian, where they go to imright.com and they find anything they want that's going to verify what they say. And it's kind of true, and I definitely want people to have an open mind. I don't, you don't necessarily have to think everything that I think. I just want people and patients to think for themselves and just make very educated decisions using all the information, not just what they find to be more appealing to their personal guidelines,
So with that, I did read a recent study talking about the importance of vitamin D. And I know for my husband, his doctor he had a vitamin D deficiency even pre-COVID, so he's been taking supplements for quite some time now. But then it came out about the studies about the vitamin D deficiency, and one of the reasons they believe it has hit the Black and brown communities a little bit harder is because so many people of color have a vitamin D deficiency. So how important is it right now for us to really kind of look at that?
I think it's very important. I think vitamin D is extremely important along the vast spectrum of health. I think vitamin D is going to continue to be important. I test for it a lot on my patients. I've diagnosed a lot of vitamin D deficiencies. I do think that people should take vitamin D supplements and keep that vitamin D at a good level. There's a lot of ways vitamin D impacts the body, most importantly with bone health, et cetera. But more true to what you're asking me, they're finding a lot of studies that suggest that people that have COVID, that are infected with COVID, are having decreased levels of vitamin D. And they're also starting to find a little bit of correlation between severe COVID cases and the vitamin D deficiency. Now, just because they're finding that, and that people with severe COVID cases have vitamin D deficiency, I can't extrapolate that data to suggest, well, if you take vitamin D supplements, then you have a lower risk of getting COVID or getting a severe case of COVID, because they have not studied that specific question yet. They're in the process of doing that. There's some relatively prelim data that's coming out, and here comes my caveats. This hasn't been put through the rigor and the machine of medicine to try and determine whether or not the data is sufficient or they have enough numbers. But studies can suggest that, all right, these cases, common sense would think that if you have lower vitamin D levels in severe cases, perhaps supplementing it would reduce your risk of severe cases. Correlation has not been found, but it's been suggested, and certainly there's nothing wrong with taking a vitamin D supplement.
And with that, Dr. Jamie Taweel with us here on the Megacast. He's an internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates. And with that, just for your overall general health, it's good to have vitamin D.
Oh yeah, vitamin D is found on vitamin D receptors have been found on a lot of things, specifically with a lot of the immune response, which is where the study with COVID comes into play. Vitamin D deficiency, vitamin D levels have been shown to be low in people with significant asthma, people with significant autoimmune diseases. People with vitamin D deficiencies can have muscle weakness. They can have issues with their bone and bone development. It impacts a lot of other systems. So it is pretty important in your overall health. It can lead to a lot of nonspecific symptoms as well as some pretty significant diseases if left unchecked.
So for the people that take like a one-a-day vitamin, is it enough for them? Is that enough of the vitamin D supplement, or should they take that in conjunction if they're doing a one-a-day?
If a one-a-day, I would assume has probably 1,000 international units of vitamin D, which is good for a maintenance dose, and I think that's appropriate. And definitely don't forget that sunlight exposure can definitely increase your vitamin D levels as well. It helps kind of catalyze the reaction that produces vitamin D in your body. But if you're deficient, 2,000 international units a day going up based on what your doctor sees is probably a good supplementation to try and get your levels a little bit higher.
It's going to be 80 degrees today. Get outside and get your vitamin D.
Exactly. I'm going to go walk my little puppy and get my vitamin D up.
Right? So we are kind of in the midst of allergy season as well. On top of COVID, the great thing is we did not see the flu cases this year that we would normally see. And I think a lot of that is, well, we're not seeing each other.
Very true. Yeah, flu cases have been down. I've said this before. I don't have any data to support this, but my thought process is twofold. Number one, people were social distancing and wearing masks. They're staying away from each other, and that's lowering your risk of getting anything, let alone the flu. And number two, the majority of the people that have flu-like symptoms weren't getting tested for flu, just in my opinion.
Yeah.
They were more or less going, do I have COVID? We say no. They go, okay, and then they go about their day, and they just assume it's something else. We weren't really doing a lot of direct flu testing. So
that is true, but the one thing though, trying to take these measures doesn't prevent us from getting our seasonal allergies though.
Yes, indeed. That seasonal allergies continue to be a mess.
And I'm trying to tell everyone, like I walked in here today and I forgot to take my allergy pill, and I was like, no, because you're sneezing, you're coughing, your eyes are watering, and I'm like, I do not have COVID, I have allergies.
Yeah, allergies can be a big mess, specifically in Michigan this time of year. I'm seeing quite a bit of it.
So with that, anything else out there that you want to touch on? Let people know before we say goodbye?
I think everyone's doing wonderful. I'm always positive. I think everyone's doing a great job. Yes, allergies are a big mess this year. Try to get them under control. Try to control the things in your ability to control. That's going to help you reduce your risk for getting severe COVID. Obviously, get the vaccine if you can as soon as possible. It's starting to open it up more. You can go to Michigan.gov or I think vaccinefinder.org. We'll give you ideas of where they're distributing the vaccine. If you can try to get your hands on it, talk to your physician. I think it's going to be very important to get that so we can have ourselves a great summer and get some vitamin D in our systems.
Right. I'm so looking forward to that. But I will say the one thing, because I go on Vaccine Finder a lot or the Oakland County site, is what they're not doing is telling which vaccine is being available where. And I know that going forward, a lot of people, especially now, like you have kids, well, they can't get the Johnson & Johnson, right? They can't get the Moderna. They can only get the Pfizer. So how do you think that's going to work? Or is there a way, do you just call them up and say, hey, are you offering the Johnson & Johnson?
Absolutely. I mean, that's also going to be important for when you're getting your vaccine. Because if you get the Johnson & Johnson, it's a one-time shot versus if you were to do the Moderna or the Pfizer, you're going to have to go in for two appointments. So I think that you're going to need to know before ahead of time so that you're not, going out of town or doing something that's going to interfere with the second dose, because you have to be within a window for that. I think that you should be able to call these places. Once they start to open it a little bit more to kids, I think they'll be a little more specific.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I'm a Johnson & Johnson person. I'm a one and done.
There you go. It's a good vaccine, and that's likely the one I'm going to get in my office as soon as I can, just because it's easier to handle. It is one shot, and I don't require the deep freezer that's going to that a lot of people having a trouble getting to make sure that the vaccine remains stable.
And that is one of the other things too. Call me a cynic, but I've been a journalist for so many years, and I feel like the more people involved, the more hands that touch the product, there is that bigger chance that those security and those safety measures in place aren't going to be followed to a T. I mean, come on, we just had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in Baltimore. The whole dose was mixed up, that and the AstraZeneca, so we can't trust the manufacturer. Then we just know human error comes to play in. So
anytime you add more steps to an equation, there's more room for error. So absolutely, I think it can be a little bit maddening, but we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. Plus, I'm a baby. I don't like needles.
Me way more than you, trust me.
Dr. Taweel, always great to have you with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me on. As always, I love being here. So I appreciate it very much.
Get outside and get your vitamin D. What kind of puppy do you have?
He's a rescue mutt. He's not a puppy. I've had him for 5 years, but I still call him a puppy because he's a little guy. So.
Well, we call ours a puppy too, and she's a mutt, but we don't like to use the M word. So sometimes I'm like, when people say, "What kind of dog is that?" I'm like, "A one of a kind."
Oh, I like that. I'll use that.
But
my dog is definitely one of a kind in how he can be a terror. I'm always trying to piece his backstory together because he just does odd things I can't even figure out.
So I had a friend who did a DNA test on his rescue dog, and it came back super mutt.
Super. My dog definitely. Something's not right with him. He's a little bit weird, but that's why I like him.
Right. We're all like that. Rescue dogs have their unique personalities. Let's just put it like that.
Ain't that the truth? But if he can tolerate my unique personality, I sure as heck need to tolerate his.
Dr. Taweel, always great having you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys. Be well.
You too. You're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. When we come back, we are going to be joined by Debbie Binder, the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's office. This is the Megacast.
Over a decade ago, the journey to a COVID vaccine began. Building upon research on other coronaviruses, scientists continued with months of research and development, 3 phases of clinical trials with tens of thousands of diverse volunteers, then peer review and authorization to deliver a safe and effective vaccine that will protect all of us. Discover the facts for yourself at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine. Wearing a mask is more than protection. It's a bridge to better days. The path back to celebrations with family. Nights out on the town with friends. Game days with your favorite sports teams. And the thrill of live concerts. But until we can all get the COVID-19 vaccine and build community immunity, which will take time, we all need to continue to stay careful. Because Michigan's recovery is depending on you, and so are your family, friends, and neighbors. So even after you're vaccinated, wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and social distance. One day in the near future, we will all be able to put this pandemic behind us. But until then, spread hope, not COVID. Learn more at michigan.gov/coronavirus. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
In times like these, we have to believe in each other.
And we believe that you'll do the right thing.
When it comes to stopping the spread of COVID.
Follow the 3 W's.
Wear a mask.
Wash your hands. Watch your distance.
And when it's your turn to get the vaccine, take your shot.
It all comes down to the golden rule.
Treat others the way you want to be treated.
We're so close, Michigan.
We can do this together.
We want to say thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday to be with us here on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios with Mr. Tyler Keefe. As always, you can catch us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, Channel 15 on Comcast, 99 on AT&T. You can also listen to us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. And then, of course, today we're also live streaming today's edition of the Megacast on our Facebook page, Civic Center TV, and 89.3 Lakes FM. 2 different pages?
Yeah, 2 different pages. Both pages, Facebook.com/Civic Center TV 15 and Facebook.com/Lakes FM.
Look at that. A double dose.
Exactly.
A double dose. Hey, you know, I'm hoping that our next guest has been able to take a vacation. After this past year dealing with the pandemic, but also the crazy election cycle. Let's bring in Debbie Binder. She is the West Bloomfield Township Clerk. Great to have you with us, Debbie.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me today. Nice to see you.
Please tell me you took a vacation.
I won't say I took a vacation, but I did take some time, like some partial days off. It was definitely a little bit quieter, but we actually have a May 4th election, so we've been back for the last couple months. So, but I'm not complaining. I did have some nice, more leisurely days.
So we do know that, the West Bloomfield School District has a bond issue coming up on the May ballot. But what is it like for you and your team when it comes to some of these, I don't want to say smaller elections, but they definitely don't get the attention or the crowds that are like our November election?
Okay, and just to correct, it's not a bond issue. It's actually a Headley restoration, so it's a little bit different. But these elections, it's funny, we think of them as a small election too, because by our standards, it is a small election. We're about 56,000 registered voters in West Bloomfield, but 25,000 of those registered voters live in the West Bloomfield School District. So what we think is a small election, if I told another clerk that we had an election including 25,000 voters, they would say that's not a small election. And we have right now, it will be a lower turnout election, they always are. Most of the prep work, though, is actually the same. You're testing the machines the same. You're doing a lot ahead of time in preparation. Your big differences are that you're not as busy at the window and you don't need quite as many election workers. But you still have to staff the precincts that are involved. We have 13 precincts that are affected by this election, so we have to have staff in each of those precincts as well as in an absent voter counting board to count the ballots. Right now, we only have about 3,500 ballots out. So it's not going to be like in November where we had 33,269 ballots back. It'll definitely be significantly smaller. However, we're in the point now where a lot of our work is very similar to what it is for a large election because we're preparing and testing the equipment.
So, Debbie, when it comes to trying to get volunteers, I think one of these smaller, or not so much smaller, but one of these elections is really a great one for some volunteers to maybe dip their toe in the water and try to really learn about the experience because, too, if they have questions, it could be a little bit easier to answer them.
There's no question. It's a much slower pace on election day, especially in the AB County Board and in the precincts. So it is a good opportunity. We're fortunate. Last year, I think we've talked before, we recruited over 300 new election workers last year, in large part with your help and your support. So we do have a large pool now from which to draw. We are looking at this opportunity when it's a smaller election to increase training of people who want to step into leadership roles, because this is a good time where they'll have time during the day to learn something new and to expand their knowledge. So we do look at it. We call it kind of the training wheels election. It's an opportunity to give people the experience and to give them the time to talk them through things so they understand it better. Sometimes they will be a little bored. We warn them they will feel a little bit overstaffed, but we have to staff knowing that people call off and that people need to have lunch breaks. So we staff accordingly, but it will be a slower election. I do want to make sure we point out to everybody, though, if you're not in the West Bloomfield School District, you are not voting in this election. So if you drive by on election day and you see a sign in front, or you find out that your neighbor got their ballot or turned it in, remember, if you're not in West Bloomfield School District, this election does not apply to you.
So is this the only issue on the ballot?
This is the only issue on the ballot.
Why is that? Is that normal? It seems a lot of work for one issue.
It happens, until I was in this role, I didn't understand what went into as much. And so I thought kind of the same thing. But when you're in the role of clerk and you find out what it takes to get an initiative and put it on the ballot, and you're getting multiple boards that have to approve language and decide when to go for things, and the timing of a millage or something that is expiring, that dictates when you have to go onto the ballot, and then you have to dictate. There are a lot of components that go to it and getting a board together. We had decided to do one actually election with another entity, and then they changed their mind and waited a year, and we were already in go mode. So I think that there are a lot of different components that go into it, including looking at when the previous millage that they're looking at expires. So it's much more complex than I ever realized until I was in this role.
It really is interesting, because I didn't even know that until we were just now having this conversation, because what is the cost associated with having an election process for something like this? It
probably will cost, this one being a little bit smaller, last year they were much more expensive, probably somewhere between 40 and 55, 60,000, depending on the election. There's a lot. One of the biggest expenses is postage. The postage is high, so it's not it's not without great cost. There's no question, but they've done their due diligence, and the boards look at it and decide whether it's a cost-effective approach to go. What happens if you wait and you're on a large ballot is we have people tend to, what we say, fall off the ballot as they go down ballot. And the lower on the ballot the item is, the less people are interested. They come in, they're voting for the top three, and the ones at the bottom are left to very few people who scroll down to the bottom of that ballot. So sometimes it's more attractive for them to go when they can actually get people who are genuinely interested in the topic.
And sometimes the argument is that by doing it like this, you're getting the people who are most likely going to vote yes on your issue to come in on these off times, to take time out, rather than like in a general election.
But you can also look at it and say, and I agree, that is the perception, but you can also see that sometimes it also gets the people who are opposed to something.
Yeah.
with the same fervor. And if you look at what happens on a long ballot and it gets down to the bottom, that decision's left to very few people who bother to get to the bottom of that ballot. So I know it's not ideal. I know it doesn't sound like there's an ideal way to do it, but there are a lot more components that go into those decisions than even I understand, because it goes back to that there's other boards that are making those decisions on when and how to handle their election, as well as looking at the schedule and their needs. There's so much that goes into it that I didn't see till I was in this role.
We're talking with Debbie Binder, as she is the West Bloomfield Township Clerk. And with that, Debbie, I sometimes get even worried bringing up absentee ballots because it seems to be such a lightning rod right now. But I would imagine that that's going to be available for this day as well, May 4th. You don't have to vote in person.
Ronnie, yes. And the right to vote by absentee ballot was protected in the Constitution by Proposal 3 of 2018. I know it's a lightning rod issue right now, but the reality is it's people's right. And the best advice for somebody who really is genuinely concerned about absentee voting is work an election and find out the process involved. It's the most reassuring thing. I can tell you that people I have recruited to work elections based on just that. Most of them don't want to work, they just want to complain. But when they do actually work the election and they find out the process that's involved in absentee voting, it alleviates their concerns. I'm going to give one example. When you heard about it, TCF Center, one of the complaints was that they weren't checking the signatures that day. If they understood the process, you don't check the signatures on election day. That doesn't give the voter a chance to cure a problem. So we check those signatures as soon as those ballots come in. And if there is a problem with the signature, it doesn't match or whatever, or it isn't signed, we're making every effort to contact that voter if we have a phone number, an email, and we send a letter to the registered address if there's time, allowing that voter time to cure that signature deficiency. So there are reasons for everything that's done in an absent voter counting board. And if people actually work an election and find out, they're reassured. They find out how many checks and balances are in place to protect that vote. And just again, their right to vote by absentee is protected in Michigan Constitution in an election that passed by almost 70% of Michigan voters to support Proposal 3 of 2018.
So with that, I keep saying the same thing. I'm like, there's so many things behind the scenes. It's the nuances people don't understand. And so I have some friends and family members, and I'm like, please go volunteer, educate yourself on the process. And so with that, in this upcoming election in May, do you still need volunteers?
We are in good shape for this one because, again, we recruited 300 new volunteers last year, and this is only 13 of our 25 precincts. So it's a much smaller staff on election day. So we are in good shape. But if somebody wants to get involved, have them call. We have people call off, and we'll look to see if we can't get them involved now. Next year we have 2 large elections again, so we will have opportunity for people to get involved. I would absolutely urge them to do so. One thing I do want to make sure, though, Ronnie, in using your platform, that people know, if anyone is in Precinct 1, which is the Orchard Lake Middle School, that is almost half not in existence anymore physically, and they're building the new West Bloomfield Middle School. If you are a voter that votes in person at Precinct 1, Orchard Lake Middle School, you are going to be relocated through the end of 2022 to Chico Elementary. So it's just important to get that word out there. Those voters will be voting this election at Chico Elementary and going into 2022.
So yeah, let people know that so that you don't get the complaints on that day saying, hey, we were turned away, this wasn't available. You can still vote.
The calls we're going to get on that day will be people who drove by a precinct, saw a sign that has a precinct number, and didn't know why they didn't get anything about the election, and then they call up and we tell them that they're not in the West Bloomfield School District, and that usually explains to them.
Debbie Binder with us here on the Megacast. Debbie, anything you want to add before we say goodbye to you today?
Just that we're here for questions. Anybody that's in West Bloomfield School District, this election, where the ballots are being handed out now, you can come up to Town Hall and get one. Want to advise people again to consider using the drop boxes on the east and west side of Town Hall, as the mail has experienced delays again. So if you want to guarantee, your ballot has to be in by 8 p.m. on Election Day, and it can be tracked at michigan.gov/vote. But you do want to try to make sure it's here by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Using that drop box is an effective way to do it. We check that multiple times a day. So, please get out there and vote.
So with that, though, before we say goodbye, we should let people know your office, you handle more things than just the election. Are you open for business?
We have been open for business most of the time, and even when it was by phone, we were never closed for business. We are open for passports, Ronnie, and I had them run a number this morning to give you an idea. Just since starting passports in the beginning of February, we're a passport acceptance agency, which means we're not the passport agency. We send things through to the Department of State, and we're trained to do so. So from when we began again in February, we have had 160 appointments since the beginning of February. And it's important to know that each of those appointments can be represented by a family of 2 to 5 people. So we have been doing quite a few passports since then, and we're still in the process. We have other tasks too. We are the MMRMA, which is the township's insurance rep, the member rep for that. We're doing coal tar right now, licenses and fertilizer permits. So, and the fireworks are starting to come in, those permits. So there are a lot of things that we do in the clerk's office. In addition to that, we do everything that has to do with the meetings and setting the agenda and procuring all of the information and all of the follow-up that takes place. So the clerk's office doesn't rest for very long. And when there's an election going, we get super busy.
Well, we always appreciate all the work that you and the members of your team are doing over there. Debbie, great to have you with us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me this morning.
And thank you. We had someone cancel, and so we called up Debbie, and I'm so glad we did because I learned something new today, Tyler.
Yes, every day we learn.
I didn't realize that about the upcoming May election, that it was just certain precincts. So.
Yeah, we have 6 different school districts in the West Bloomfield area, and this is just one specific school district. So again, if you're not in the West Bloomfield School District, you will not be eligible to vote in this particular election coming up. It'll just be for those in the West Bloomfield School District. So it's 13 out of the 25 precincts in West Bloomfield. And of course, you can call the clerk's office for more information, and if you're curious of whether or not your precinct is one of those voting in this election.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast. When we come back, we are going to be talking about this crazy real estate market. It is insane right now, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, but people are buying houses. That's next on the Megacast.
Quitting smoking can improve your health, but it also protects your loved ones from secondhand smoke. Did you know there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke? Smoke from cigarettes, e-cigs, and hookah can travel through ventilation systems and harm those around you. So clear the air and stop secondhand smoke. Call the Michigan Tobacco Quit Line at 1-800-784-8669. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
I want to get back to seeing my grandbabies every Sunday and smothering them with big hugs and kisses.
I want to get back to football games with my boys.
I want to get back to feeling and touching, connecting with the people around me.
I want to get back to family dinners and my grandma's mac and cheese.
I want to get back to real grocery shopping, taking my time, walking down every aisle, smelling the tomatoes and melons, having a free sample or 2 or 3.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. But now, there are vaccines. And they are the first step that let us get back to feeling optimistic about the days ahead of us. It's okay to have questions.
Is it safe?
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Now, get the facts. Learn more at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Taking time out of your day to be with us here on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. Tyler?
Yes.
You rent right now, right?
I do rent right now, yes.
Well, that's good because I will say it is not a good time to try to buy a house.
No.
The market is insane. If you're selling, it's an awesome time.
Oh, yes.
But if you're trying to buy right now, let's just say, be prepared. Because houses are getting snapped up left and right. And to talk a little bit more about the crazy market right now, Jim Manna with us. He is a broker and owner, Level Plus Realty. Thank you so much, Jim, for being with us.
Hi there. How are you today?
So what is driving this housing market? I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Thank you. It's a great question. But it's a couple things. One, there's a shortage of listings. Second, we've got phenomenal interest rates. So those are the two things that are driving this crazy market. We haven't seen this since 2006, right before the crash.
Which unfortunately is when I bought our house. When we bought our house.
Wow, yeah. So
top of the market.
You bought at the height, and that's what people are doing now. But this time around, it's gotten extremely ridiculous. It's reminding me of the markets in California and Florida, where people just go in and with crazy offers. We're seeing there's a joke going around with an addendum saying, we'll wash your car for a year, we'll clean your house, we'll name our first kid after you. For God's sake, we're $50,000 over asking price and homeless. Please help us.
Oh my gosh.
That's the joke that's going around in our industry, but it's really, really bad. I have 90 agents that work here at Level Plus Realty in West Bloomfield. And everybody's complaining about the same thing. If you've got listings right now, you're the king of the hill. And if you're representing buyers, good luck. I called one agent and said, I have an offer, $30,000 above asking price. Can we make this happen? And he said, no, I think we can do better.
What?
So, yeah, there's a lot of greed out there. Wow. So, and I think some of that is going to come back and bite some of these sellers because they're really taking advantage of the situation. And greed is a horrible thing, but it's also out there.
But on the back side of this, we know the market at some point is going to crash. You're not going to sustain this level of.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I mean, and people ask me, when do you think that's going to happen? Well, we've been going up now for the last 12 years since the last crash, and your average cycle lasts about 7 years in our economy, in our national economy. So we've been due for the last 5 years, but the low interest rates have really been driving this market. We've got lower prices as compared to the rest of the country. They were lower prices, not anymore. But it's fortunate and unfortunate. Fortunate if you're on the selling side, unfortunate if you're on the buying side. And then, so a lot of people who are considering selling are in the same predicament. They're saying, okay, I'm going to get top dollar for my house, but then am I going to be able to find a house? And if I do find a house, am I going to be able to sell it?
That is so true. That's actually because I've been on my husband about us doing just that, and he's like, no. The good thing is, we bought at the top of the market, then it crashed. So a lot of people moved into the neighborhood at half the price, but now it's back at the top market. In fact, 15 years in, I know that my neighbor just listed his for about $40,000 more than what they paid for it. Wow. And they lived in it for 15 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. That is. Absolutely.
So what advice do you have for people?
So here's the advice that I have, and I hate to as a realtor, you think this is going against my selling principles, which is if you don't have to buy, wait. If you don't have to sell, wait. You can wait this market out. However, you've got to do a balancing act. So for example, I've got a mortgage right now at 2.5%. So if you've got to compare and say, okay, this market's going to slow down. And I think that the rate at which it would slow down would be if interest rates got to about 4.5. So if interest rates are at 4.5 and this market slows down, not slows down to the point of 2008, 2009, I don't think you'll ever see that again. And the reason for that is in 2008, 2009, that crash was precipitated by a lot of fraud. There was a lot of fraud in the industry between mortgage companies, between buyers and builders, between sellers, between title companies. All that's gone now. The federal government has put so many parameters in place to prevent that from ever happening again. Mortgage people have to be licensed now. They're not allowed to speak to appraisers. A lot of good safeguards have been put in to protect our economy from that happening again in the residential market. However, this craziness of the price wars right now is not going to stay like this. And once interest rates start creeping up a bit, it's going to level out. And when I say level out, it's going to become more of a buyer and seller market where you can get a good deal out there and find other deals. So another thing that I would recommend if a buyer came up to me and said, what do we do? Is the houses that need work, the houses that are not in perfect move-in condition, those aren't going to have the crazy multiple offers like others are going to have. So that's going to give you an edge to possibly consider something that's going to need a little bit of work, a fixer-upper, that type of thing. Another thing that's hurting us in terms of driving up values are the people that are in the cannabis industry, the medical marijuana or the marijuana industry that are buying homes, living there, and growing weed in the homes. So that's creating a seller's market for that also. So, but they have to live there. If they don't live there, then it's illegal. So
what do they do? Like basically just find people to live in the house for them?
Sorry?
So what are they doing? Just finding people to live in the house for them? Or does it have to be that homeowner?
Yeah, either renting it to them or they're living there and growing themselves. So that's another thing that's creating demand on our market, thanks to the legalization of the cannabis industry in Michigan.
See, that's fascinating because I know that industry is growing, but that's the first time that I've heard that angle that could be playing into the real estate market. We do know that right now it is a growing industry, and some people are having trouble finding employees at some of these other industries, like working at the gas stations or your local bars, because so many people are going to work in the cannabis industry. Yeah. So it's really kind of creating this vacuum of needed employees throughout other industries as well.
Yeah, there's a joke going around that they can hire people. They're called trimmers, where they come in once a plant gets to a certain stage where they have to trim the plant. I've never done it, so I don't know, but they have to trim the plant, and they're getting paid $20 an hour to do that. So like, how do you compete with that?
Bud tenders, I think is what they call them.
Right.
So with that, Jim Manna with us here on the Megacast. He's a broker and owner for Level Plus Realty, also West Bloomfield Township trustee. I have to ask you about there is that new property that's going up here in West Bloomfield called the Reserve. I'm like, $500 and something thousand for one of these houses. Is that in part due because it is a brand new entity, and they're beautiful. They are beautiful, but I'm like, do we have that kind of money in West Bloomfield? What am I doing wrong in my life, Jim?
We do. Keep in mind that a lot of I'm having a coughing spat here.
Oh, that's okay. That happens to me often, especially right now with the allergies. So I had mine like Monday.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, unfortunately, that's happening is because, and partly due to our borders being closed between us and Canada, lumber prices, and that's only one of the reasons, but lumber prices are at a extreme high right now. I'm building right now, so I'm caught in the middle of it, unfortunately. And so the cost of construction is way, way up. So these builders are working on lower margins, and the demand is there. So it's all based on, the market and the demand. And the demand is there, so they can get those crazy type of prices.
Right.
Keep in mind, the people that are maybe moving there have a home that they're selling. So they're getting a lot of equity out of their home, and they can afford that. And new construction tends to be a lot more expensive than a used home. So that's also a part of that.
Yeah, that is one thing, because I know so many people that work in the trades. And one thing throughout this pandemic, that industry is booming. You cannot get enough workers in that skilled labor industry right now, because really the supply is down because there aren't enough new houses being built right now.
That's right. That's part of it. And unfortunately, again, that goes back to the cost of construction right now is at an all-time high. And so that's hurting it quite a bit. So that's part of the reason. So you may be able to find raw land, you may be able to develop it, but the cost of construction has just gone nuts right now. It really has.
This is a crazy world that we live in, Jim.
Yes.
So how long do you anticipate this bubble to last?
I estimate that I think it's going to continue. I hope it doesn't continue at this rate right now, because you're going to see, I honestly feel you're going to see a lot of realtors getting out of the business because it's just, they can't compete. You know, we've got 20 offers going in on a single home over and over and over again. It's just, it'll burn you out. And you feel sorry for your clients who can't get a home. I've got a couple of veterans that I'm representing right now in the 500 to 700,000 price range, and we keep losing out. And we're going over asking price. We're using all kinds of different gimmicks to try to win out, but just too many buyers, not enough sellers out there. So I hope it's not going to continue for the rest of the year, but I believe that in the short term, it is going to continue like this. And then within the next 6 months, I think it'll level out. And then I truly believe with what I'm seeing right now with the national debt and with what's going on with interest rates, I believe that they're going to creep up and the market will slow at some point. And I do believe that's going to happen by next year.
So Jim, is this something that we're just seeing here in the state of Michigan, or is this nationwide?
It's absolutely nationwide. It's absolutely shocking. I talked to, a lot of the clients that we have are relocating from other states. So we see them we see them going through the same thing that we are here, where multiple offers, they're getting top dollar, and it truly is across the country. And you've got to give credit to the low interest rates. Money is so cheap right now that it's nuts. I would have never dreamed in a million years that I'd be paying 2.5% on the mortgage.
Right, and for the people that are out there, now is take a look at it, because if you could refinance right now, there are factors that you need to look in for your personal situation, but it is a good time to refinance.
It really is. It really is. I've got family members that are in the mortgage industry, and they're going gangbusters. They're, highest income ever for a lot of these mortgage professionals, thanks to the refinance craze.
Wow. Jim Manna with us here on the Megacast. He's a broker and an owner for Level Plus Realty. And Jim, I don't know if you've been kind of following this saga going on in Detroit with Nicole Curtis from HGTV and the Detroit Land Bank Authority. I'm just kind of throwing this question out. But one of the things, because I'm like a Detroit Land Bank Authority expert, I did so many stories on them throughout the year, so I love that. She's a firecracker. But one of the issues and the topics that's kind of come out of this is about trying to get title insurance and the importance of title insurance. What exactly is that, and do you recommend it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing this for 33 years, and I don't think I've ever done a real estate deal without title insurance. And right in the body of the purchase agreement, it's going to state that the seller is required to provide title insurance to the purchaser. And it's crucial. You can't do a deal without title insurance. And it's one of the best investments you can make. Now, on the seller side, it's usually the seller paying for a title policy for the buyer's sake. And then the buyer has to pay for a title policy to protect the mortgage company. So there's actually two policies being sold during a normal transaction, unless it's a cash deal or a land contract, for example. But yeah, it's crucial. You can't do a deal without title insurance. The title insurance is basically the title company is insuring the closing. They're the ones that are going to conduct the closing. They're like a third party that's protecting everybody involved. They're going to do a title search that goes back 40 years to make sure that there's no liens or tax issues or recorded interests that they need to remove. They also make sure that the seller is who they say they are. That, a seller can't bring somebody, their girlfriend or something, to come and close a deal, or boyfriend or whatever, to close a deal instead of the spouse, and all that stuff, all the nuances that go in with title. So yes, it's absolutely important. And I would never close a deal without title insurance.
That is, so when we talk about quick claim deeds,
yes.
Explain the difference of that and land contracts, because it can get a little fuzzy, and as people are trying to, get a home, especially if you're looking for something right now, they may be falling for some of these fraud scams that are out there.
True, very true. So the most important deed that you can ever get in a transaction is a warranty deed. It's called a warranty deed, and that encompasses all and protects you against all and any liens or issues that may come up later whereas a quitclaim deed is only quitclaiming the interest of that person who owns it now to the next person. So you don't want to do a quitclaim deed unless it's between, family members and you've done for tax reasons, whatever reasons you have. A quitclaim deed is the least protective to get if you're on the buyer side. So I don't ever recommend that you get a quitclaim deed. I always recommend that you do a warranty deed to protect your interests. And again, don't pretend to know the law. Have the title company do it. They usually have lawyers on hand that put all that together. So I always recommend talking to an attorney or lawyer that can give you the best advice, or you can call a title company and they can also give you the best advice regarding how best to do it. But always warranty deed over quitclaim deed.
See, that's why we talk to people such as yourself, and if anyone is in the market for buying a home, you need experts like this, because as someone who has done more than my fair share of trying to dig through the property records when it comes to the city of Detroit, it is a nightmare. And I will say you need to have very well-sourced individuals within the some of these agencies in Detroit so they can try to help you navigate
I agree.
the craziness in Detroit.
Keep in mind, though, with the land bank, there are times when you can get phenomenal deals.
Yes.
But you gotta do your homework. It's not easy. You're competing with several other people that are looking. Anything that's too good to be true is just that. So you got to do your homework. You got to do your due diligence, and hopefully you're going to end up with a good deal. But most of those are good deals. Just depends on how many people are trying to buy it and how much competition you have, that type of thing. So.
And one of the benefits with the land bank is you get a clean title. But on the backside, so, for those that may have not been following along, because, Nicole Curtis is from Oakland County, Lake Orion, and she has this very popular show on HGTV. She buys a house in Detroit, and then a few years later, the land bank comes to her and says, wait, we own it. She's like, no, you don't. I bought it. I have it. And so now they're in this huge dispute. It's getting national attention, but it really does highlight some of the issues that are going on with the property records within the city of Detroit. And we know this happens other places as well, although we don't hear it quite often here in Oakland County.
True. Yeah, we don't. Oakland County is one of the richest counties in the country, really. So you're not going to find a lot of property that's going to be owned by the county.
Right. Or just some of these crazy fraud cases as well.
Sure. Fraud's at an all-time high, and I gotta say that it's extremely sad. But it's not coming from within our own country. It's coming from outside of our country, and you just got to be diligent. You got to have protection on your PC, on your computers, and you got to be able to read through the junk. We get so much junk email on a daily basis of saying, I've won millions of dollars on a daily basis, just so you know. I win millions of dollars every single day. All I got to do is answer their questionnaire and give them all my account information. They'll send me the money. Right.
Exactly. Jim Manna, great to have you with us. Anything maybe I didn't ask that you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I love Civic Center TV, and I love all the things you guys do. And sometimes I'll be channel surfing, and I love to watch just to see the different topics that you guys cover, and sometimes it's fun.
Well, thank you so much. We do get a very wide range of individuals here on the show, and I'm like, every day I learn something new. So, who could say that when they go to work every day?
That's right.
Jim, it's great having you with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Jim Manna he is the broker and owner of Level 1 Realty, but also West Bloomfield Township trustee. We're lucky to have him dedicating his time here to the community, but also it's just an insane real estate market right now.
It is. It's so tough to navigate for both buyers and sellers, and it's good to have experts on your side throughout the process in good times and in more complicated times like now, so that you're making sure you're putting your best foot forward, the sellers are getting their best return on their investment in their home, and that buyers are not getting played by sellers or by the systems in place or becoming victims of fraud, as we've all talked about today with Jim Manna.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast, and when we come back, we'll be heading to Birmingham. That's next on the Megacast.
Over a decade ago, the journey to a COVID vaccine began. Building upon research on other coronaviruses, scientists continued with months of research and development, 3 phases of clinical trials with tens of thousands of diverse volunteers, then peer review and authorization to deliver a safe and effective vaccine that will protect all of us. Discover the facts for yourself at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine.
Quitting smoking can improve your health, but it also protects your loved ones from secondhand smoke. Did you know there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke? Smoke from cigarettes, e-cigs, and hookah can travel through ventilation systems and harm those around you. So clear the air and stop secondhand smoke. Call the Michigan Tobacco Quit Line at 1-800-784-8669. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Great to have you with us here on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. Just about 15 minutes left in the show. Sadly, so many of some of our favorite events are still being canceled.
Yes.
We were hoping that by this time we'd be well on our way out of the pandemic, but we are still struggling, especially here in the state of Michigan, with the surge in the numbers. And one of those events being canceled, the Art Fair Village Fair. To talk a little bit more about that and all other things related to the businesses in the Birmingham Bloomfield area, let's bring in Joe Bauman. He is the president for the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. Joe, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Ronnie.
I want to go to the movies.
So I put this background up specifically for you since you gave me such a hard time when I swapped it out a couple shows again. So I do want to start with the Birmingham Theater, though, because there's some exciting news there if you hadn't heard. The Birmingham Theater was recently purchased by Paul Glantz's group with Imagine Entertainment, and it is going to become part of his stable. It is currently closed for what they're calling a refresh, but should be open back to serve the community by the end of May. So we're very excited about that.
With that, so do they still own the Imagine just a few doors down?
They do, yep. And so they will coordinate, the screens of the 2 theaters. And as Paul explained, the more screens you have, the more buying power you have with the film company. So it's a real good thing to have both of them under one ownership.
Yeah, and you know what's nice about that too is it's right there locally, and so they're trying to bring more people in because we need to keep the theaters open. We know some have been closing, especially the smaller, more independent ones, and I will say between the two, I like going to the Birmingham one. I know they're a block away.
It's a very iconic theater. I mean, as you probably know, for many years it actually had live theater. Before it was converted into a movie house. But there's a lot of history with the Birmingham Theater, and we're really happy that it's going to be under Paul's stewardship with the Imagine Entertainment Group, and good things to come in the future for it.
So with that, because we do know, how is the other movie theater doing right now? Are they, since they've been allowed to reopen, has it been pretty successful? We know this past weekend, the huge movie was Godzilla versus Kong. And that's really what they're hoping is going to re-energize the movie industry.
Yeah, it's my understanding. I actually spoke with Paul probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they're doing fine on weekends, but during the week it's still slow. It all goes back to a little bit what we talked about last time with all of the offices, the majority of the offices still being empty with the state's work remote rule. We just you're not getting that critical mass of people downtown that might, drop in and see a movie after work or what have you. But we're hoping that as the summer comes and there's more activity and more people are vaccinated, that you will have more people coming back to the theaters.
Or anyone out there that's listening or watching, if you don't want to be around crowds, go during the week.
That's right.
That's the time to go. There's always a silver lining. It's just how we look at it.
That's right. You have to make lemonade.
So with that, Joe, we know that the governor has pretty much been saying over the past couple of days that she's hoping to reduce some of the restrictions come summertime. And of course, a lot of times we think of the restrictions from a public standpoint about the restaurants and some of the businesses and the capacity limits. But really, probably one of the bigger impacts would be allowing for more office workers to return to the office buildings. Your thoughts on that?
So the Birmingham Bluefield Chamber helped launch a coalition about a month ago called End the Office Ban, and it was part of Reopen Michigan Safely coalition that was spearheaded by the Michigan Chamber of Commerce for that very reason. Our downtowns were not intended to only serve and be supported by the residents of the community in which the downtown is located. It's critical for downtown businesses to have that daytime influx of office workers who shop before or on lunch hour or after work, who may go out for lunch or might meet a friend for a drink or dinner after work. It's critically important. And for, there's going to be a big decision made at the end of this month as to whether the office ban is extended, modified, reduced. We're hoping that it will be modified and that more people will be allowed to return safely, first and foremost, to their offices, and really put it with the employers and the employees to determine what's the best fit and what's the safest way they can reopen their offices. Because we do
know in one side of this, employers don't want their employees to get sick, because if they come in and it spreads through, it can wipe out like their entire office or an entire floor or department. But with that too, I just kind of find some of these things where I'm trying to look at the science and data that she likes to quote when we're talking about, but the casinos can be open 50%. So if I can go inside and gamble for 8 hours, why can't I go into my cubicle where a lot of office spaces are doing that, where they are spacing people out?
And that's exactly our point, is that there has to be some collaboration with the business community to address those kinds of issues. I'll give you an example. So our office at the Chamber, we have a staff of 4. We each have our own individual office space with the door. It would be hard to argue that we wouldn't be able to socially distance, wear masks when we're there, reduce the common area usage, and there's offices like that all over the place. So we just want the business community to be able to work with their employees, work with their labor groups if they're in a union environment, and come up with a safe and effective way to bring some people back into the office. Because while it is true that many people have done just fine and thrived working remotely, that's not the case for everyone, and there is something to be said for face-to-face collaboration, brainstorming, working together as a team, and that's really what's been suffering from having this office ban.
Yeah, and you wonder too, will offices do what a lot of schools have been doing, and they have cohort A, cohort B, so on, these days are for team A to come into the office, these days team B comes into the office, you do a deep cleaning in between.
Yeah, and back in April of 2020, it's hard to believe it's been a year now.
Right.
OSHA and MyOSHA both did issue some standards as to how businesses could keep their workplaces safe and what kind of standards they were required to use based on the intensity of the usage of the space. Every business in the state had to file a report with OSHA and MyOSHA outlining how they were going to keep their employees safe. The problem is we never really got to implement those, because then the state of Michigan, on top of that, with the first executive order, and then the state health department with their "if you can work remotely, you shall," kind of superseded all of the other work that had been gone into preparing your office for a safe environment.
We're talking with Joe Bauman. He is the president for the Birmingham and Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. And Joe, as we sit on the sidelines and we watch these numbers surge to higher than what they were this past fall and even at some of the beginning stages of this pandemic, when you see those headlines, what do you think as the president of a Chamber of Commerce?
They're very concerning to me because we know what happens when we've had surges in the state in the past and the kind of actions that state government has taken to try to combat that. It seems like right now, Michigan, like many areas, we're in a race. It's the virus versus the vaccines. And one of them is going to win, and we feel confident that ultimately the vaccines are going to win, and we are going to get through this. But in the meantime, with these surges and with the variants, it appears that the disease has become easier to catch and easier to transmit. And so the only surefire way to fight against that is by having as many of our people, residents, businesses vaccinated. And so it seems like at some point we're going to get to the point that you either are going to get vaccinated or you might end up getting the virus. And we would much prefer to have everybody vaccinated so we can loosen these restrictions and not have this constantly, having people worried about the virus.
So with that, as the numbers do start to surge, just thinking about the retail outlets that are a part of your association, what are you hearing from them?
So what I'm hearing from them is that they're going to continue to really work on their online selling platforms. They're going to continue to provide curbside pickup of where you can go online, you can make your purchases, and then you can stop by the store and pick them up. Many of the, especially the independent retailers, have gone to reduced hours and reduced days to try to help keep their employees protected. And also, though, again, reflecting the lack of foot traffic because of the office ban. So yeah. I think, entrepreneurs are amazingly resilient people, and they're going to figure it out, and they'll continue to figure it out. But there's no denying the economic impact that these shutdowns have had, all for good reasons for doing them. And I think, by and large, what's been done has been effective. But we really need to get people vaccinated, and we need to get, to that herd immunity so we can put this behind us.
Well, the good thing is we're having beautiful weather today. Let's hope Mother Nature gives us the weather we got last year. We really can't complain. We had a beautiful summer here in Michigan. But in the summer months, we all love to go to so many of these unique events, which really kind of make our communities, our local communities. Do you anticipate more of them are going to be canceled going into the summer?
Yeah, it's so disappointing. So just in the last 2 weeks, the city of Birmingham has decided that to cancel the Chamber's Village Fair, which would have been our 57th annual, and this is the second year in a row that the fair has been canceled, which is really a historic, community event for Birmingham Bloomfield. And they also decided to cancel the Birmingham Bloomfield Art Center's annual Mother's Day Art Fair. And so those two happened around Memorial Day. They had been given provisional approval earlier by the City Commission, but the emergency manager in Birmingham determined that because of what's going on in the state and what he's seeing, that he didn't feel that we could we could guarantee a safe environment for residents and guests. So we're very disappointed with that. We understand, but it's a huge blow to the chamber. I've mentioned before that, the Village Fair, not only is it the largest fundraiser for the Chamber of Commerce, but also we partner with our nonprofit network, and we provide about $20,000 in grants to small nonprofits that are working so hard in Birmingham Bloomfield, like Birmingham Youth Assistance and the Lions Club and Rotary, and they partner with us to benefit from the carnival as well. So, and we're not going to be able to do that. This will be the second year in a row that we're not going to be able to financially support those small nonprofits that are really hurting. So very disappointing, but we dust ourselves off and we start planning for 2022.
Well, and they're lucky to have someone like you at the helm over there at the Chamber of Commerce, because I know that people such as yourself, you guys are working around the clock to try to ensure that our businesses are able to keep their doors open. And we want to say, Mayor's right around the corner. Mother's Day, please, please, please support local.
Absolutely. More critical than ever. It's really easy to shop by moving your mouse around and doing a few clicks, but
it's that one click thing on Amazon. You swipe it. I don't even know how my finger does that.
But I remind people that, for people who have children who were involved in any kind of organized activity, whether it be youth sports or scouts or dance or whatever it is, when you were holding your fundraisers and when you were looking for sponsors for your team, the company that wants you to swipe, you don't see their logo on anyone's Little League uniform or heading up a bake sale. It's the small independent entrepreneurial businesses that have always supported the community, and now they need our support so they can continue their support for sure.
It's so very true, and I know that so many of us are feeling the pandemic fatigue, but please continue to support local. Joe, it's always great having you with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here. I do want to mention very quickly, the beautiful new Daxton Hotel has opened. It opened last week in downtown Birmingham, right at Old Woodward and Brown Street, which if you're looking at my background, it's just a little south of the Birmingham Theater sign. So please check out the new hotel. It's absolutely spectacular, and they want everybody to come in and check it out.
And the restaurant, Madam?
Yes. It's already difficult to get a reservation.
So that is the good thing. Joe Bauman with us here on the Megacast. He's the president for the Birmingham and Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. We always appreciate you and your expertise throughout the pandemic. That's going to wrap it up for the Wednesday edition of the Megacast. 2 hours, just like that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be back here tomorrow morning, 10 a.m.